morning and a warm welcome to today's Broadland District Council Planning Committee meeting, both for those who are present and for those who are watching online. My name is Councillor Eleanor Laming and I will be chairing the meeting today. On the top table we have Ben Burgess, Assistant Director of Planning, Adam Banham, Principal Planning Officer, and Lucy Palmer, Democratic Services Officer. I will introduce planning officers as they come up to present subsequent presentations. We're not expecting a fire drill today, but if the alarm does sound, please leave via the far exits which are clearly signed in green and assemble in the car park outside. This meeting is being live streamed, recorded and will be available later to view online. Members of the public are welcome to film proceedings as long as they are not disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. If anyone wishes to film or record this meeting, please identify yourselves now. Please can you ensure that your mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent? And councillors, please do not use your mobile phone while the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks as needed at various times throughout the meeting. And if you must use your mobile phone, please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is set out on the agenda and this is published on the website. All members will have received in advance a copy of the agenda, presentations and any updates. Members of the public can only speak if prior arrangements have been made in accordance with the Council's scheme of public speaking. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker. There is a maximum of 15 minutes allowed per category, so if there are a number of speakers, you will need to arrange how to allot the time between you. And only people who have registered to speak will be able to address this committee. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application. Then public speakers will be asked to present their case, followed by questions from members of the committee to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. When it is your time to speak, you will be invited to come and sit in the public speaking area, which is just at the front. The order of public speaking is parish and town council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters, for example the applicant or the agent. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allotted time of a maximum of 5 minutes for each speaker, and this will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions will be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. And then the committee will then discuss and determine the application. Finally, there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents, photographs, or anything of that nature at the meeting. Have we got any questions before I open the meeting? No? Okay, thank you. So we come to item number 1 on the agenda. Have we any declarations of interest? Councillor Hempsall.
Okay. I am the County Councillor for the Acle Division, which includes Reedham, so all of the speakers on the first application on the agenda are known to me, but I've had no involvement with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Karimi Guvanlu.
Thank you. And now we come to the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on Wednesday, the 11th of September. Have we any comments or observations to make on those minutes? Are we happy to approve the minutes? Yes, thank you. They're approved. And now we move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is applications for planning permission to be considered by the committee. So we come to application number 1, which is planning number 20220887. It is in Reedham and is on land at Barn Owl Close. And I invite the planning officer, Adam Banham, to present his presentation. We will just wait a minute. Thank you. Councillor Mia, welcome. Could I just ask if you have any declarations of interest before we begin? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as the description of development explains, this is an application for 27 homes from Badger Building. It's on a site measuring 1.17 hectares. To give you some context to Reedham and the surrounding area, Reedham, for obvious reasons, describes itself as the heart of the Broads. It's at the edge of the district. In terms of distances, it's a 25-minute drive and 12 miles back here to Poswick, and 15 minutes and 6 miles to Acle. Because of the geography of the area, I think it's worth noting that the majority of traffic from this site would be heading north, either towards Acle or northwest towards Norwich. To zoom in further on this site, we've obviously got the Google Map image with the red line of the site. Access for this site would be through the recently completed Barn Owl Close, also by Badger Building. This first phase of development consisted of 24 homes. This map is from the Greater Norwich Local Plan, and the key point here is the site has been allocated in the recently adopted plan. Reedham obviously has a range of services, a school, food shop, pub, village hall, public transport. It's worth noting that this northwestern section of the village grew up over time to do with railway, and this site is approximately 5 minutes walk from the station itself. This is the site location plan submitted by the applicant. Key points here to note are that there's existing development to the north, properties on Yare, View Close and Whitton Green back onto the application site. We've obviously got the first phase of development to the west. To the east is an arable field which has a public right of way, and to the south is Nursery House, which is a large residential property in a large property curtilage. This is the site layout proposed by Badger Building. Key points to note are obviously the access point and the proposed footpath link that would continue to the east of the site. 12 properties would be accessed directly off the new road that would be running from east to west or west to east through the site, and then we've got 9 properties accessed off the northern private drive, and then 6 further properties accessed off the southern private drive. There's landscaping buffers to the west and east of the site. In terms of parking for this site, obviously you can see that certain properties have their own garages, but all the parking would be provided either side by side in the plot or as tandem spaces. Every property has at least 2 spaces excluding garages, and you may note from this layout that there's a couple of visitor spaces just to the south of the open space at the centre of the site. give some background to the site, and hopefully the purple star on the map at the bottom right corner will help you orientate yourself. We've got the existing access from Barnell Close. If this application was approved, it would mean that a total of 51 dwellings would be using Barnell Close to then access Station Road. The Highways Authority has expressed no objection to that. Again, to give some context to the site, this is looking eastwards from within the site. Again, hopefully the purple star will help with orientation, and we're looking through an existing gap in the hedge eastwards to Cliff Close in the distance. So there's existing trees along the southern boundary which would be retained, and you can just see those at the side of the photograph. This is a photo looking northwards from within the site at the rear of properties on Yareview Close. Again, there's several trees along the boundary. These would be retained. And also it's worth noting that this application includes various conditions. One of those which is proposed is around a construction management plan, so I'm satisfied that sufficient safeguards are put in place so that during the construction phase there wouldn't be any unreasonable disturbance on neighbours. I thought it was worth just going through with you the mix of accommodation on the site. So you've, next to the layout there, you've got the list of private shared ownership and affordable rented properties. 18 of the properties will be for open market sale, and along the northern boundary we've got 2 and 3 bedroom bungalows. Then the houses are mainly along the eastern boundary and then through the centre of the site. The layout plan shows provision for up to 23 new trees, but the exact species proposed are yet to be put forward by Badger Building. They'll do that as part of finalising their highway details. A key issue for Reedham is the capacity of the sewage treatment works. As you'll see from the report, Anglian Water have made no objection to this application, and all that they've requested is that a condition is added to the permission, if it was approved, to deal with how the foul drainage would be connected. Just in terms of policy compliance, this scheme does meet GNLP Policy 5 in the context of providing 33% affordable housing. The mix of affordable housing is also appropriate at 60% being for affordable rent and 40% being for affordable home ownership. The affordable housing will be built to the enhanced building regulation M42 standard, so will be more accessible, and it's worth noting that we've got the 2 one-bedroom bungalows to the south of the site, plots 20 and 19. As you'd expect for an application such as this, there's also going to be a local lettings policy which would give priority to residents from Reedham. However, there are a couple of policy shortfalls which I've noted in the report. These are to do with the compliance against the nationally described space standards. So certain property types, the Holver 3-bedroom house, the Benacre 2-bedroom bungalow, and the Saxted 3-bedroom shared ownership house do fall marginally below those standards. Moving on to the access again, just to give you context to the site. This is the view from Barnalve Close Phase 1, looking towards the access into Phase 2. And then this is taken further down Barnalve Close. The road does have a downhill slope to it, but the gradient is not excessive. And as I said, the Highways Authority haven't raised any objection to the proposed arrangements here. Station Road has good visibility. This photograph gives you the view along Station Road. There's obviously a full width footpath, but unfortunately this is not the norm for Reedham. The way the village has developed means that there are significant stretches of the village which don't have the benefit of a footway. Reedham has a recently agreed neighbourhood plan, and so I've given some consideration to the policies in that plan, particularly as you can see here, the key viewpoints which are identified in the neighbourhood plan. This plan is taken from the neighbourhood plan, and the only change I've made is to add on the red line of the site being considered here today. In terms of distance, the site is approximately 350 metres from the river, which is unsurprising given the way Reedham did develop as a riverside village. And it's worth noting that just on the opposite side of Station Road you have the start of the Broads Authority administrative area, which is shown in light blue. This photograph is taken from the driveway of Nursery House and looks towards the back of the existing Barnalve Close development, and you can just see to the left of the photograph the Broads landscape in the distance. Similarly, to give you the view looking out from the site at the southwest corner, you can see the curtilage of Nursery House, and then further properties as you go down to the riverside part of the village, with the Broads landscape in the distance. In terms of the housing mix, as you might expect, Badger Building are proposing something very similar to their Phase 1 scheme. So this is an example. This is the Saxted 3-bedroom affordable home ownership product, which would be to the south of the site, shown by the yellow star. And there's a terrace of 3 properties for that. This is the 4-bedroom private sale Ellingham house. I think there's 2 of these on the site, and the yellow star shows the property on the eastern boundary. With all of these properties, it's traditional style of housing, gabled roofs, a mixture of red and buff brick, with feature panels, usually of black boarding or render. And then, just as a final example, I've shown the floor plan of the 1-bedroom affordable rent property. The scheme has a central open space which is divided into an infiltration basin, and then a small children's play area to the east. The children's play area measures 222 square metres. Badger Building are proposing wooden balance beam equipment, bench and waste bins for the play area. The infiltration basin is next to it, but it's designed to be safe, with shallow sides that would allow for self-rescue, if during, for example, winter months or during heavy downpours, there was standing water in it. This screenshot shows the neighbourhood plan and its policies map, and again all I've done here is to show in red the site boundary. You can see how the train station and the national cycle network connects to the station area of the village, and then the riverside area of the village is separate and connected most effectively by the purple dotted public footpaths. With that in mind, and with the requirement of the Greater Norwich Local Plan to improve connectivity through Wyndham Badger Building, have proposed this arrangement for the public right of way. Also, as you can see on this slide, there's an enhancement to the quality of the public right of way to increase the width of it to 2 metres and to add in a hoggin top dressing. The benefit of that would to make the path more usable in all seasons of the year. The benefit of the 2 routes is obviously the blue route gives you the direct desire line for people wanting to head towards the station, and the yellow route gives you the direct desire line for people walking from Barnowl Close across to Cliff Close. This photo is taken at point A on the map and is looking back towards Barnowl Close, and you can see here that the public right of way is well used. This slide, which is an adaptation of the GNLP map, shows the point really that you've got the station in the northwest of the village, the school in the southeast. The public right-of-way improvements are therefore necessary and useful, and also Badger Building have looked at a further off-site improvement on New Road where it joins with the hills. This photograph shows where the improvement to the footpath would go along the current grass verge, which would allow people to connect to Cliff Close and the public right of way. Unfortunately, footpath upgrades further on towards the school are just impossible because of the nature of the highway. It's very narrow with the curtilage of properties hard up against the road. However, Badger Building have agreed with Norfolk County Council Highways that they would fund the costs of consulting upon and providing signage to support a new 20-mile-an-hour traffic regulation order. And with this map that's been provided by Badger Building, I've just shown with the red dots where the 20-mile-per-hour zones could begin on the key roads, or the 3 routes into the village. That brings me more or less to the end of my presentation, except to say you'll note that there will be a Section 106 agreement to accompany this application. It would cover all the things you might expect for an application of this size: affordable housing, open space, the public right-of-way dedication, and GIRAMs. And also, again, typically for an application of this size, there's 20 conditions proposed to do with highways, archaeology, trees, landscaping, drainage, air source heat pumps, dealing with unknown contamination, and water efficiency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions for the Planning Officer from the committee? Councillor Copleston.
Thank you, Chair. Adam, On the site layout, I noticed on the west hand side there is some sort of highway soakaway. What is the purpose of that? Is that for fluvial flooding or surface water flooding, and how will it appear? Because it's just on the entrance of the houses, and I've got no idea of what that will look like. Thank you.
It'll be mainly a grassed area, and through the negotiation of this planning application, the infiltration basin has been flipped round, so there's a access around it should it need future maintenance. But in terms of its appearance, it'll be inconspicuous. It'll just be a grassed area.
Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just clarify, at the end of your presentation, you mentioned the S106 and does that cover the infrastructure points that were made several times in there? You did refer to some of them, doctors and whatever.
The Section 106 will mainly concentrate on the affordable housing and the local lettings to that, the open space, improvements to the public right of way. It won't have the off-site highways improvements. That would be part of a separate legal document with Norfolk County Highways.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Adam. Just a point of clarification about the property's access from the private drive. Did you say there was 9 in total? Does that concur with guidelines? In my head, I thought it was 8 was a maximum, but I may be wrong.
I'm not sure on the guidelines, but I know that the County Council are happy with this, as is our waste management team, because you can see on the layout here you've got the bin collection points, so residents would drag their wheelie bins to those collection points, and there wouldn't be any need for the refuse vehicle to travel onto that private drive. The main roads through the site would be to an adopted standard and will eventually be adopted by the County Council, and that includes their required visibility displays. So your exact point I don't know the answer to, but I do know that the County Council is content.
Is it possible to check what I think it was in the DPAD, isn't it, that there is a maximum figure?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I'll come back to you in a minute on that. I think the point I'd just follow up with from Adam on there is, if I look at that plan, there's 8 properties served off that private drive, because the other 2 can be served off that. 2 at the extremes of it can be served off the adopted road, if I count them correctly.
I think you're right. That bottom, that site at the bottom there is accessed off the adopted road, isn't it?
Yeah. But I'll look at it quickly for you and come back to you.
Councillor Alber.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of sort of clarification questions. The public open space in the centre there, is that going to be fenced all the way around?
Not all the way round. You can see there's a fence there which would effectively stop children running into the road.
Is that a hedge then?
So yeah, you've got hedging around the north and the top, and then the side to the infiltration basin is open. That's generally considered the better practice.
Because I would have liked there to be fenced all the way round, because small children will be playing in that, and it just makes sense. They're not going to run into the road and things like that.
That could be something that we could discuss with Badger. I think with these kind of debates, it's very much preference rather than a definitive right or wrong. That also might be a discussion that would be useful to have in conjunction with the parish council.
Okay, well, yeah. When phase one was put into planning, was there a plan for phase two? Was this just a separate thing? Just as a little bit of context.
I don't know what was in the minds of obviously the landowner or the developer, but I know that phase one was allocated in 2016 under the Broadland site allocations development plan of that time. This site was promoted by Badger fairly early in the process of writing the Greater Norwich local plan, so it's certainly a proposal that I would think has been in the public domain since probably 2018, when we did the call for sites as part of gathering the evidence for the Greater Norwich local plan.
Just final one. So the land behind it where the footpaths are, that's not proposed to be development land. That's not in the Greater Norwich plan, and it's not proposed to be touched in the future. Am I right in thinking that?
That's right. So the plan that I showed at the beginning is the Greater Norwich local plan for Reedham. The neighbourhood plan, which has recently gone through referendum, doesn't propose further sites for allocation.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the planning officer? Yes, Councillor Coppleston.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the first parish council response in 4.1, beginning of page 16, the parish council said there were concerns of properties on Barnell Close having subsidence issues, and that is mentioned again latterly in the report about a French drain being put in for some properties, and I'm just slightly worried about those comments. Thank you.
I've discussed those points with the developer, and I'm satisfied that there wasn't a subsidence issue. From speaking to the developer, it was to do with just the way the drives were constructed and picking up the kind of standard snagging issues that do occur. But obviously the developer is here today and may want to address those points himself.
Councillor Hempsall.
Sorry, Chair, just a quick question. Is the, apologies if I've missed this, so is the play area going to be taken over by the parish council in the future? Or is this going to stay within the management company for the site?
I believe that Badger Building are working on the assumption that they would employ a management company to deal with that, but I believe they're still open to conversations with the parish council in terms of details.
Okay, so it's fair to say that if any adjustments were, you know, called for in terms of additional fencing around the play area, that could really easily be sorted out by the parish council, who will have still receipts from the development and or the management company who will receive their management fees, right? So
I would have thought so. I mean, these the proposal put forward for the play area would be the part of the approved plans, but if there was a discussion between Badger and the parish council to make amendments to those, then that would be something that as a planning authority we could accommodate.
Yeah, I'm just minded that as an outsider, I wouldn't want to, by condition, stamp on, you know, what my perception of you know, a countryside play area would be. That's all. So thank you. I'd rather leave it to local discretion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I have a question as well. Looking at the plan, there's an existing landscape buffer on the western side of the site. It says on the plan that that's going to be reduced to 3 metres wide. I also note there is an existing landscape buffer on the eastern side of the site. At the moment, it looks as though that's going to be retained as in its current state and size. But I also noticed that both those landscape buffers are within the red line of the development plan, and they are also in effect therefore in people's gardens. So on the eastern side, it seems to be in the gardens of plots 9 to 12, and similarly on the western side it's also in some of the gardens. So my question is, well, first of all, the landscape buffers in a rural location, well, in all locations, but particularly in rural locations, are really important for wildlife and biodiversity. We've also seen a report come out only today from Natural England on the importance of retaining space for nature and the pressures of development on existing space available for wildlife. And so the question I have is, what is there to stop the people who own those houses from reducing the size of those landscape buffers? They're going to be in their gardens.
I have spoken to the applicant about this. I think their preference would be to ensure those landscape buffers are retained by virtue of a restricted covenant in the sale of those properties. But again, that may be a question that you'd want to put to the applicant further into the discussion.
Thank you. Before we move to public speaking, do we have any more questions for the officer? No. Okay, so now we will move to public speaking. And first of all, we have representations from parish or town councils. So I believe we have Councillor David Hale here, who is the chair of Reedham Parish Council. Thank you for coming to speak. If you just take a seat at the front there, and to speak, just press the button on the right hand side.
Good morning. I practiced standing up in front of you all earlier, so luxury to sit down. My name is David Hale. I'm councillor and chairman of Reedham Parish Council, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. While I think we have to concede the need for more housing, not only in our towns and cities but also in our villages, these new properties should not just be concerned with making up numbers, but must take into consideration the wider comments and requests made by local people. This is true democracy then. While you have received a large number of objections to any development on this site, a fact I'm surely you'll have to consider when making your decision, the Parish Council did not object because the need for houses in our the need for houses in our county has been made, but we feel there is a need for certain mitigations and conditions to be made before giving the development permission. Firstly, to learn from the way the developer acted during the building phase of phase one. Dirt and dust are an obvious hazard when building, but steps can be made to keep them to a minimum. This was not done during phase one. And we now have more houses in close proximity to it, so it's more vital that dirt and dust is addressed this time. Noise is another hazard. This should be kept to a minimum, and at certain times, e.g. mornings and evenings, maybe not allowed. Phase one, there was a lot of swearing and loud radios, and radios were left on over a weekend in a fenced off site, so people couldn't switch them off. you know, there are children around and the rest, so we don't need swearing, and I don't think we need radios left on or on too loudly while they're working. And we believe that delivery of materials to the site should be planned so that large lorries that are not trying to enter or leave our village at the same time as a school bus or a school coach, because as you've said, we have very narrow roads, and school coach is a full-size coach. All of the above will need close monitoring to confirm compliance. It's also noted that Justin Coope from Badger Homes said he had numerous meetings with the parish council. This is untrue. I've been chairman for many years and met Mr. Coope once, and that took a lot of organising. He was very reluctant to come and see us. He may have meant he met the landowner, who is also a parish councillor, but he didn't meet the parish council only once. We also wondered what is the reason for the existing Barnow Close still not being adopted. I don't think it's been adopted yet. And after the building, the drains going down the road became blocked, and we had a struggle to get it cleared because, again, it was Badger that had to clear them, not highways. So we just don't know why it's not been adopted. Coming to your buffer zone, what is the reason for reducing the landscape buffer from its present 7 metres down to 3 metres? After all, it was a condition of phase 1 that it was 7 metres. It's a bit of a joke if it suddenly becomes 3 metres when it was a condition of phase 1 to be 7. Our school is thriving and at near capacity, and we have very few footpaths, as has already been mentioned, because the road carriageways are not wide enough for the school. So we would benefit from having a village-wide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which you've already mentioned.
Councillor Hale, you have 1 minute left.
Okay. We feel the footpath should continue where it is and not be placed on the roadway. And the village sewerage works must struggle to cope. It was put in the 80s, and judging by the amount of tankers I see coming in, especially during the summer, any additional houses will not help the situation. Anglia Water will probably say it can cope, but we all know where the waste goes when it cannot cope. But they will see a large increase in revenue from these properties. I hope you can see that we're not negative in this matter, but we do represent the village at parish level, and I hope the wishes of the council can be heard. We live in and serve a very special place, and we wish to have a special place preserved and enhanced. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming to speak. If you perhaps could stay, there might be questions from the committee. I don't. Just now. Yeah. Do we have any questions from the committee for Councillor Hale? Councillor Copleston.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. That was very informative. Just looking at your second consultation in June 2024, there are some points that you make in that about the wildlife corridor and the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm mainly concerned about your comments as to the limited capacity of Reedham's sewage treatment works. And could you just tell me whether Anglian Water use tankers at the moment? And I have looked at the Anglian Water comments, but I'm very concerned about the capacity of the works. Thank you.
Yes, I live just on the edge of the village, and I see tankers coming in, and sometimes I've seen 2 or 3 a week coming in, and they must be taking it to Norwich, I guess. They were built in the 80s, and since the 80s we've had a huge amount of building done, and we've felt, I mean, I'm actually on record as saying I don't want one house built if you don't increase the sewage works, because I think it's important. And with, you know, pollution, if it overflows, it's straight in the river. So yeah, there are quite a number of tankers go down there, although Anglia Water will say it can go, because we've asked them.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for the speaker? No? Okay, thank you very much for coming to speak today. We now have Mr. Mark Smith If he's here, thank you for coming to speak today. Yeah, you have 5 minutes and I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Okay.
Okay, I'm here today to object to this planning application as a resident of Barnell Close. I bought my house from the developer in what I understood would be a small, quite close at the time of purchase. Myself and other residents were not informed we were phase one of a much larger scheme. We fear what the future holds and oppose those who seek to erase the identity of a small rural village. Reedham is lacking in infrastructure for development and is at risk of becoming an urbanised town. Residents are concerned that Barnell Close will become a much larger estate, becoming a rat run potentially where hidden agendas seek to develop adjacent land and connect it to other parts of the village. The single point of access to the proposed site poses major safety issues, especially from extreme volumes of large construction vehicles on a daily basis. Some houses are less than 9 feet from the estate road. Who will take responsibility and be held accountable when problems arise that result in damage to homeowners' properties? The local authority or the developer? The site plan proposes too many houses, significantly increasing road traffic volumes. The current site plan affects existing properties' privacy by overlooking and overshadowing, worsened by the proposed reduction and loss of an existing landscape buffer, which was part of phase one. If approved, agreed construction conditions must be closely monitored and enforcement action taken as necessary. Unacceptable levels of noise, air pollution, antisocial behaviour by workers and bad traffic management went uncontrolled during phase one. Residents' complaints from Yearview Close in particular were ignored by both the developer and the local authority. The developer accepted responsibility by paying compensation for dirt and pollution deposited on neighbouring properties. The developer's failure to implement conditions of work and maintain good working practices is very much at risk of happening yet again. We would like to see the developer become a member of the Considerate Constructors Scheme. It is unacceptable to allow local residents to repeatedly suffer during a very lengthy construction phase. Potential for flooding, particularly surface water runoff, is a worry where subsidence has already affected properties following phase one. The more houses built, the flooding risk increases regardless of expert flooding assessments. Surface water will follow a path of least resistance and, in my opinion, was a major contributory factor to the subsidence experience, plus the lack of soakaway, which resulted in a permit to work to install one. And unfortunately, one was installed on a neighbouring property without their permission, which was Nursery House. There is no geotechnical ground survey on the planning portal for this particular application. Seasons are wetter and residents' gardens have flooded, experiencing slow surface water drainage. Soakaways are ineffectual where clay seams may exist below the surface depths not assessed by the developer. All Barnell Close road drains have had to be cleared because they were either partially or fully blocked, as previously mentioned. Inadequate infrastructure for sewage in Reading results in foul smells reported by residents in Barnell Close. Failings do occur during formal consultation, regardless of expert opinion. It is a fact in the UK that long-standing properties now experience flooding that previously never existed as a result of new developments cropping up. So who will take the responsibility this time and be held accountable when problems arise and homeowners refuse house insurance as a result of flooding? Again, the local authority or the developer. If approved, this site must remain a secure compound for construction work and associated traffic only. It will be unfair on residents to experience additional unwarranted traffic. There is no agricultural taking place in the adjacent lands opposite the proposed site, and other access points do exist in the village to access that adjoining land. I'll conclude by saying to you all, when this plan application was first submitted, there was a strong representation from Readham residents to keep the green
Mr. Smith,
footpath
you
and
have 1 minute left.
tree planting within the development. When the plan was resubmitted, none of the representations had been considered by the developer, who is intent on further urbanisation of our delightful Broadland village. You have seen the comments made by Readham residents who accept new homes built in our village, but would like to have a development which is green and pleasant for existing and new residents. The developer has chosen to ignore the views of Readham residents completely. I understand that you can only vote to approve or refuse the plans as presented to you, and I'm asking you this morning to support us by making the brave move of refusing the application and asking the developer to resubmit the plans incorporating the wishes of the residents. That's me finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to speak today. Do we have any questions from the committee for the speaker? No? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you.
Is it the left-hand button to turn off?
Yeah, just press the right-hand button. And now we have Mr. Coote, if present, to come and speak. Thank you. Again, you have 5 minutes to speak, and I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. To introduce myself, I am Justin Coote and I am a Director at Badger Building. I speak this morning in support of our application for 27 dwellings, which is an extension to Barnell Close in Reedham, which was completed in 2020. That development was successful, sold well, and any issues resolved in good time. The application site is a housing allocation in the GNLP for approximately 30 dwellings. As you have heard, our application proposes the construction of 27 dwellings, includes 1,260 metres squared of open space, and delivers a number of off-site benefits and improvements. Our application was made in 2022 on an emerging allocation site. During the intervening 2.5-year period, Badger have worked with the LPA and statutory consultees to provide a proposal that is well designed and considered. The proposal addresses all the comments made and results in a scheme that has no objections from statutory consultees and responds to policy requirements. The application proposes 27 dwellings, including 10 number 1, 2 and 3 bed bungalows, 2 number 2 bed houses, 9 number 3 bed houses and 6 number 4 bed houses. The proposed layout follows good design principles and is centred around a central open space with the access road designed to adoptable standards. The layout is a result of discussions with the Senior Heritage and Design Officer and addresses the comments he raised. The proposed dwellings themselves are traditionally designed with gable roofs, a mixture of red and buff brick with feature panels of white rendle on selected plots, and is in keeping with the Barnell Close development. The scheme has been designed to minimise the impact on existing boundary trees and proposes a significant number of new trees. This includes replanting the existing tree belt behind the current development, which has failed to establish with more substantial trees, albeit to a reduced width. We also propose a further planting belt on the eastern boundary of the proposed development, which will re-provide the reduced width of planting. Bungalows have been positioned on the northern boundary to minimise the impact on the existing properties. The application is in flood zone 1. The flood risk assessment accompanying the application, which is supported by infiltration testing, details surface water from the dwellings going to soakaways and permeable paving. The highway surface water is dealt with by a combination of filter drain to a highway soakaway or discharge into the infiltration basin. The foul water will be connected to the public sewerage network, which Anglian Water have confirmed that the Reedham Water Recycling Centre has capacity to treat the flows from the development. The application also provides the following benefits, which will be secured by Section 106 agreement, which has been drafted and is agreed in principle. 33% affordable housing, totaling 9 dwellings, comprising 6 number rented properties made up of 2 number 1 bed bungalows, 2 number 2 bed houses and 2 number 3 bed houses, all of which meet building regulation M42 accessibility standards, with 2 number 1-bed bungalows built to wheelchair accessible standards and with wet rooms provided. And also 3 number 3-bedroom shared ownership or shared equity dwellings.
Mr. Coote, you have 1 minute.
It also provides 1,260 metres squared of open space, which includes an equipped play area equal to a lap provision, off-site open space contribution of circa £100,000, GRAM's contribution, public right-of-way improvements. In addition, the proposed schemes will also provide the additional benefits of off-site footpath improvements to New Road and promotion of a traffic regulation order to create a 20-mile-an-hour zone for the village. In summary, the application scheme is on an allocated site in a sustainable location, is well designed, has no objection from any statutory consultees, is substantially policy compliant, and also provides a number of benefits to the local community. Thank you for your time, and I will do my best to answer any questions members of the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions, if I may. So the first question is, there have been concerns about the construction site management previously with the stage 1. I just wonder, and you didn't address those comments made by the speaker earlier, I just wonder if there are any improvements internally or who you're going to employ to actually build out the site, providing it be given planning consent, to ensure less unneighbourly construction practices. And my second question is, it relates to the point that you raised, Chairman, and that perhaps involves the planning office as well. It's the buffer zone and it being in the curtilage of a number of the houses. And I'd just like a bit of clarity on why that particular issue is being covered by restricted covenant and not by planning condition. Thank you, Chairman.
To address the excuse me, to address the first point, there will be a planning condition which covers a construction management plan. I can't speak on behalf of the residents. Construction does involve some noise and dust. We will do our best to conform and stick to best practice. There are always disgruntled residents because nobody likes development adjacent to where they live, but we will and always do follow a construction management plan and best practice. With regards to the second question and the tree bark planting within the curtilage of back gardens, we are open to either putting something in the title by way of a restricted covenant to make sure that those trees are maintained and retained, or we're equally open that they could go into a management company and be managed in perpetuity. That hasn't been confirmed yet because discussions, the management of the open space area hasn't been confirmed because within the section 106 there are options as to which body would manage and take that on.
And just to confirm for members as well, we can go either way from a planning perspective. We can condition it either way as needed.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Copleston.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Coote, for your assessment. I just wanted to know about the private drives on the proposed site, there's quite a long one to the north and west, and there is a smaller one on the southeast side. I'm concerned about surface water flooding. Will these be a permeable sort of membrane, and will water be able to sort of percolate through to the soil on these areas, please? I'm also worried about the comments made by local people that Barn Owl Close, the existing part of Barn Owl Close, the drains have been blocked, and the local people had to wait while Badger Construction sorted this out. I don't think that is a great situation, and I just wondered, is there a management committee set up, or a management company, for the first phase of Barn Owl Close, and can that be extended? I also like the idea of the proposed management company managing the wildlife buffers as well. I think that's very important. So if you could just answer those, that would be kind. Thank you.
So firstly, the private drives are all proposed as permeable areas with infiltration. Infiltration testing has confirmed that that is the appropriate solution for that site. Excuse me if I miss anything, you'll have to remind me. In respect of a management company on phase one, there are no communal areas requiring a management company on phase one, so there isn't one currently. The management of the road remains our responsibility up until the point that it becomes adopted. If there's a future question on that, we are currently working with Highways to get that road adopted. In response to the drains being cleared, we responded as soon as it was identified as an issue to us. We can only respond when issues are raised. In terms of the wildlife area, it's not a wildlife area. It is a tree planting belt, which could double up and could benefit the wildlife. As I said before, we're open to either option.
If I could just come in quickly just to answer the question Councillor Vincent had earlier on, it just reminded me because we talked about private drive there. It did used to be 5 off private drive, but the County Council have relaxed it to 9 properties now, so the number that we have on there is acceptable.
Thank you for clarifying that. Do we have any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Alber.
Just a minor question, really. Can we make sure that the maintenance company deal with the maintenance of the drive as well? Is that going to be part of their remit? Because from experience, I know these things get weeds and no one really takes care of them. So it really needs to be part of that maintenance plan that the private drive is looked after, as well as the green spaces.
Private drives are usually the responsibility of the properties it serves. So that private drive will be a shared responsibility of the properties that it serves.
Okay, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Coop, for your presentation. Your not really a presentation, but thank you. My question goes back to the buffer. There's been lots of concern about the reduction in the buffer, which was originally 7 and it's now going to 3. Could you explain the reasoning for that, and if there is any scope of not reducing that, please?
So the tree planting belt was originally 6 metres. We proposed and this was something that was offered by the landowner and wasn't our responsibility, so it was on private land and was secured via the Section 106. the planting that has been provided has not taken very well and is not, I would suggest, as intended. So we, as part of this application, propose to split the 6 metres into two, so that we kind of bookend the site and offer a planting belt on each of the east and western boundaries, which will form part of our clearance of landscaping condition.
Do we have any other questions at all for our speaker? No? Okay, thank you very much for coming to speak today. Thank you. That is now the end of the public speaking session. So we now hand over to the committee for comments, discussion, and then finally voting. So do we have any comments? Yes, Councillor Auber, and then Councillor Auber.
Okay. Well, firstly, I just want to discuss Anglia Water and some of the comments we get from some of these outside bodies. They've got no issues. They say in their response back, they've got no issues, and we get this quite a lot with the authorities. They give you no issues, but they don't explain any reasons why there's no issues, and there's no elaboration on that, and that really winds me up, because just the one line gives us no information at all. So I don't know if we can go forward, if we can ask them for more information going forward. We get this quite a lot, and it's not very helpful at all. Given we know that waste is tanked out, we don't know whether that's within capacity, whether they've got enough tank. There's no elaboration around that at all, and I think it would be helpful to have a bit more. So that's a little gripe. On the subject of the proposal, I mean, I think it's a small development. What is it, 23 houses? I think the developer has seems like they've worked well with yourselves, with the county council. I like the idea of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit around the town. I think that's really good. I like footpaths that have been put in. There seems to be some willingness by the developer to actually improve the whole village. So as far as I'm concerned, that's to be commended. The looks of the buildings seem to fit in. The footpath improvements seem really good. So I think, I think have taken on board the comments from yourselves and from other places, and I think they've done as much as they can do. The seal payments will help a little bit in terms of investing into the local parish, but I think it's a small development, but I think it's one that should be approved. I think. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think Assistant Director of Planning would just like to say.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I know you're in the members' debate at the moment. I just wanted to pick up this point about Anglian Water because I thought it was worth me responding back. I think that's probably a criticism you can level at us in terms of the officer report, maybe not Adam's fault, but the way that we report them, because we do have quite a significant response from Anglian Water, running to about 2 or 3 pages, that does go into detail as to why they're comfortable with the scheme. So perhaps that's for us to report better to you as members going forward in the future.
That would be really useful, I think, because one line doesn't really give us any picture.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you, Chairman. Picking up on a few points, I think the consultation responses, I think, were addressed really quite well. On the last point that you raised, Ben, I think the committee reports have become rather concise under your predecessor, and I just wonder, for the benefit of councillors, were actually a bit more elaboration, and in fact, I think if the statutory consultees were invited in for some training, for joint training by both councils, I think that would be very welcome, just for planning committee members to understand better how our statutory consultees arrive at their decisions. I have, as Chairman, you highlighted, I have concerns about the buffer zone, especially parts of it going into private ownership. I do understand, I mean, restricted covenants can occasionally get lost in the mist of time, but planning conditions do not. So I just wondered, Chairman, I'm looking at you because you raised it, whether you would be supportive of adding in a condition that that outlined the restrictions, because, you know, before you know it, a garden shed will go up or something else, and, you know, the buffer gets eroded. As my last point, what I'd like to ask, simply because the construction of Barnell Close in its first phase had a bit of an unsettled history with local residents. I just wonder if, by way of an informative, Ben, it would be possible to ask for some signage with a contact number should any, you know, I'm sure nobody left the radio on purpose over the weekend, but should any such snags happen during the construction period, that local residents are able to get in touch with a responsible company, with a construction company, who can come at short notice and address the issues they have. But that's me, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, to answer your comment, I would be very happy to support some sort of condition that goes in to protect those buffer zones if it's possible from a planning perspective.
Chairman, I'm happy to make a recommendation.
Well, should we? There might be more discussion, so we'll add that in with a proposal when we vote. But so, Councillor Leggett, did you?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Copleston and then Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come in and say I would like to see the buffer zones protected more thoroughly, and I completely agree with Councillor Hempsall about that. I also like the idea of a management committee set up for the management of this site with the open spaces, and to work with the parish council, and I'd sort of like that put in the condition as well, because I think these private drives, there's quite a large area of private drives, they can look a mess after a while, and it would be nice if the management committee could oversee the maintenance and repairs of these private drives. My concern is still the capacity of Reedham sewage treatment plant and what Anglian Water have said. Nobody's mentioned too much nutrient neutrality. I know the site is close to the River Yare. I understand that Anglian Water discharged sewage sometimes into our local rivers, which is very concerning. I just wanted to ask, because I did read the bit on nutrient neutrality and I understand that is outside the zone, but is there anything we could ask the developer to pay for some nutrient credits, as this is a big concern to our committee and to the local parish? Thank you.
If I can just perhaps pick up on a few of those things that's been discussed between various members who've gone through, I'll take them in turn. So in terms of the buffer strips, I would suggest that goes into Section 106 agreement and forms part of the however they are dealt with, whether it's a management company, whether it's the parish council that take them on. So we can do that through there rather than through a condition. But there was also a condition, I can't remember the number of it, I'll find it now. There's also a condition 13 that can requires a landscaping scheme and tree planting plan to be submitted. So we're covered in two ways in that respect. In terms of the informative for the construction contact, I've got no problem with putting that on. I think that's eminently sensible. that'll dovetail with the construction management plan as well, which is condition through condition 6. The management company, I'm going to say that we can't deal with the private roads through that, because everyone will be paying into that management company, but only the people who are on that road would benefit from that, if you see what I mean. So I don't think that's fair to the rest of the development. In terms of nutrients, the point you make in terms of it being outside of the area, we'd have no levers to bring in any more credits or a contribution to deal with that, so no, we wouldn't be able to have that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair. I had 3 points. One was around the drainage, and the second was around the site management, but I feel they've been appropriately covered off by my colleagues, so I won't repeat those. It just leaves the third one, which is the landscape buffer, and I know we have talked about that already, but I'd just like to refer back to the report, paragraph 4.7, and the landscape architect's response, who noted that the buffer is an important feature, and to ensure the continuity of its management suggests excluding the buffer from the domestic curtilages of plots 9 to 13. Now, if and I support the proposal for having a management or a management arrangement or planning condition to make sure that buffer is protected. But my point of clarification is, how is that possible if the buffer is within those domestic curtilage?
It's a fair point. I think it would have to be managed, obviously, primarily from one side. That would be the key part of it. And in terms of, sorry, I'm only looking at that because I'm looking at it, just not because I'm not looking at you. I'm going to suggest something, but then I'm going to ask with the acceptance of the chair that we ask the agent for this, or the developer for this. I suggest that could perhaps be dealt with via a covenant, so that they could have access to that land to deal with it. Is that fair, Justin, or not? Because if you only, I take the point that Councillor Vincent's making, you can only maintain it from one side. How have you got the certainty you can maintain it from the other?
So rights exist within common law to maintain hedges. If we were to put it into a management company, that land would be transferred to the management company, and they would have a right to maintain from the non-developed side, and then the residents would have a right under the common law to cut anything that overhang their fence. Either that, or we could put a lower rail fence to that boundary.
That's really helpful. And sorry,
it can be dealt with in a number of ways.
Yeah, and sorry, if I pick you up and probably explain a bit. Apologies, Councillor. Sorry, I'll leave the chat to come to you in a minute. But if we have a fence on that side of the, if it's completely excluded from the residential curtilage, and we have a fence on the residential side of it, then as Justin says, I agree. If there's any overhang into it, that would be for them to deal with. But we would still have the 3 metre buffer within there, so it would still be there and be able to maintain from the non-residential side.
Councillor Hempsall.
So I'm slightly confused. How a landscape buffer, is that only at top level? Because what does a boundary treatment look like if it has to separate the landscape buffer? I thought the whole point of it is that all sorts of critters have free access within the landscape buffer. I don't quite understand how a boundary treatment works in that sphere. I've never seen anything like that before. So, to me, it would either have to be open, or you would. I mean, you'd have to design it in a way so you could get, you know, the hedgehogs or whatever else needs to roam within the landscape buffer to do its own thing, or, you know, even hedgerow birds, you know, a lot of them are, you know, foot off the ground to do. So I literally don't understand what that in practice looks like when it's in place. If you could help me, that would be really good. And again, I don't, because the landscape buffer is going to be within the curtilage of a number of homes, I don't quite understand how the management company can protect that, because unless it's by condition, because the condition would then have to, it would have to mandate A, the type of boundary treatment, and B, the extent to which, I'm guessing, there would be no permitted development rights within that curtilage. So I just think that's not been terribly well thought through, Ben, with the greatest of respect. If you just could just enlighten me a bit.
Yeah, certainly, and apologies, that's probably my fault of not explaining it in the right way. The boundary treatment we are suggesting now would be outside of the residential curtilage. There would be a fence, and then it would be this buffer strip. And in terms of what that buffer strip would be, well, we have a condition, as I said before, it's condition 13, that requires the full detail of that landscape buffer treatment to be submitted to us, and then determined by us in obviously consultation with not only our landscape officer but our biodiversity, ecology and tree manager. So we would be in control of what's planted in there. We would also then be in control of the management and maintenance of that, because the section 106 would require management and maintenance plan to be submitted to us. But the key thing to note is it's completely outside of, now as we're saying, it's completely outside of the residential curtilage. All I perhaps confused matters with before was there will be certain branches, parts of the hedge, whatever, that will fall over into, or grow over the fence. That's fully within the rights of the residents to deal with that, but it's not within their rights to go onto the strip outside of the residential curtilage to deal with that, because the management company would deal with that, or the parish council.
Thank you. Do we have any more points for discussion? Councillor Leggett.
I fully support all the amendments, and I need to ask Councillor Orber if he is prepared to add those to his proposal, because that's what I confirm. Thank you.
Yes, me too. I'm happy with Councillor Hemsel's one.
Thank you. I mean, I'm happy. Just beforehand, I'd just like to sum up. I mean, from a planning point of view, I think we have to agree that it is an allocated site in the GNLP. The other positives are it is actually providing 18 open market properties, but 6 affordable rental properties and 3 affordable home ownership properties. So that is a really positive thing, because increasingly we're seeing applications come forward where we see a reduction in affordable home provision. So this is a very positive point in this application. And the other positive point that I think has been mentioned is the hopefully provision of a 20-mile-an-hour zone within the village, which I believe the costs might be paid for by the developer. Is that correct? Yes. The promotional costs will be paid for by the developer. So that is extremely positive as well, and will benefit the village. And I think, to be fair, the scheme does reflect the landscape character of the area. I'm pleased that existing trees and hedgerows are being retained. I know we've had quite a discussion about the buffer zones, but it's good to see that significant trees aren't being removed or anything like that. And it's also good to see that the footpath provision, there would be, improved footpath provision and sustainable transport routes within the village. So that's very positive. But obviously there are a number of concerns on this site that have been raised, that we've looked at, particularly things like the sewage capacity and construction traffic disruption. But I hope I mean, I think there are clearly some issues with this application, and I think many residents have highlighted their objections to it, so I would say that it isn't perfect. But where possible, I think the recommendations of consultees have been taken into account, and there aren't any major concerns of consultees. There are a number of conditions that have been applied. I'm pleased to see that there might be a way through with the landscape buffer zone reduction, and actually making sure that those are retained, certainly for biodiversity. It is particularly important that we look at that. So we have a proposal from Councillor Hempsall, seconded by Councillor Coppleston.
So let me just clarify the amendments, please. What are the amendments we are making?
Amendments, yes. So what we've agreed is that the planning officers will look at how we can retain those landscape buffer zones and make sure that residents won't be able to basically take them down. That it looks like there might be a way perhaps of putting a fence between the gardens, particularly on the plots on the eastern side, and between a fence between the garden and the buffer zone, so that then the buffer zone will be retained and can be maintained by the management company. Yeah, that's right, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Also the informative that would guide the construction period as well, so that was part of my suggestions too, so just for completion.
Thank you. So we have a proposer, we have a seconder. All those in favour raise their hands, please. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. That planning application has now been approved. Thank you to all those who attended. Would anyone like a break before we move on? We'll have